Let's come back now for our third presentation. The following parable we will be exploring seems very familiar, and yet scholars rightly call it one of the least understood and indeed most difficult to understand parables of Jesus. It is the only story we have of Jesus where a character is named.
Right.
Key anthropological insights are buried like treasure in this parable. Insights that disclose to us much about Jesus' social and economic situation and that of his followers in the first century Jesus movement, out of which our church comes. Like all the parables and really everything in the Bible, we are dealing with a story of high context. Luke and Jesus both expect their audiences to provide a great deal of auxiliary background information so as to get their message. They leave a lot left unsaid, expecting their hearers to fill in the gaps. Before we grapple with this spuriously familiar story, let us pray. But we did that.
We flipped that over. That's all right. We flipped the script. It's all good. That's how life is.
All good.
Prayer is good anyway.
Thanks, Tatiana. Appreciate that. We've been working on 4 of the most difficult parables. 2 so far, and now our third. They don't usually appear in the common lectionary, so they're not often preached on. People know these parables, but they don't usually get a lot of attention. Moreover, they deal with a subject that Jesus talked about a great deal. For United States people, it can be very shocking to learn that Jesus said a lot about wealth and money. Again, as I told you in the previous presentation, Jesus had a lot to say about peasant economics. Remember that scholarly exercise. Bible students are told to go through the Gospels with 2 markers, one blue, one red. Go through the whole Gospels and everything Jesus says about religion underlined with blue. Now go through the Gospels with a red marker, underlining everything Jesus said about money with red. Result, 3/4 of the Gospel texts were underlined red. Today this morning and into noon, we're going to be talking about the parable of the rich, greedy man, and Lazarus. It's a story about a beggar at the gate of a greedy elite who eats the crumbs that fall from the rich man's table. Both of these men die, and in the beyond life, their positions are reversed. Let's read the parable. Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31. Jesus said, "There was a rich man who dressed in purple garments and fine linen and dined sumptuously each day. And living at his door was a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who would gladly have eaten his fill of the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. Dogs even used to come and lick his sores. When the poor man died, he was carried away by angels to the bosom of Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. And from the netherworld, where he was in torment, he raised his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at his side. And he cried out, 'Father Abraham, have pity on me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am suffering torment in these flames.' Abraham replied, 'My child, remember that you received what was good during your lifetime, while Lazarus likewise received what was bad. But now he is comforted here, whereas you are tormented. Moreover, between us and you a great chasm is established to prevent anyone from crossing who might wish to go from our side to yours, or from your side to ours." He said, "Then I beg you, Father, send him, Lazarus, to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, so that he may warn them, lest they too come to this place of torment." But Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." He said, "Oh, no, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." Then Abraham said, "If they will not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded if someone should rise from the dead." We cannot repeat it enough times. The Bible is not a Western library. We have Westernized it, but the fact is that not a single biblical author had an American in mind when he wrote. Consider, if you've ever lived in a different culture than that of mainstream United States people, for example, Nigerian people, if you lived among Nigerian people, you should have no problem at all acknowledging that people from different cultures don't act and think like Americans. Right? That would be true between any two cultures. And here in this rich cultural milieu in South Florida, we have plenty of times to experience that every day. Indeed, we have a whole cottage industry that has emerged in the past few decades that tries to figure out just how to do cross-cultural communication accurately. So easy to misunderstand someone from another culture. If you've ever lived abroad, you realize just how easy it is to screw communication up. Which one is wrong and which one is right? Carl? Is Matthew right or is Luke right? How can it be? Why is it that almost it never, see, because you guys, if you all were standing in front of me or sitting in front of me, you see, and we say, describe my laptop. It's black. It's black, see? I would go, oh, it's got a picture on it of a guy with a book in his hand. Who's right and who's wrong? It's so easy to misunderstand somebody from another culture. Why is it that almost never occurs to us Christians that if we cannot communicate across culture clearly in verbal speech, why would we necessarily communicate clearly in written speech? The Bible's not written for us, folks. It was written for a culture that is very different than ours, one that no longer exists completely, but continues to exist in some degree in the Middle East. In fact, the Middle East of today is the closest thing we have to a living laboratory of the world of our Bible, New Testament included. Things in the ancient Middle East were not exactly like things are now in the Middle East of today, of course, and yet the 21st century Middle East is a hell of a lot closer to the biblical world than the United States has been for even one day in its history. This means that we can use anthropological, cultural, and social studies of the Middle East today to at least begin to get a clue what life was like in the society in which Jesus grew up. That's taking the in incarnation seriously, the in of inspiration seriously.